For as long as I could remember, visitors and members of the Branham Tabernacle sat in pews silently while listening to a 1947 to 1965 recorded sermon of the prophet. As they listened, they sat facing the prophet's image with God hanging above his head in the blurred image of light. For me, sitting through the sermons while looking at the halo relic made the sermon feel more alive. It felt as if there were a spiritual bond between the listener, me, and the prophet. I was surprised the first time I saw old photographs of the prophet's early church. It was one thing to use the halo photo as a frame of reference for an image of the speaker that we listened to every Wednesday evening and 2 times on Sunday. It was entirely different, however, to think about the prophet standing in front of a photo of the prophet. Yet as I looked at the early photographs of the prophet and his church, this is exactly what happened. That same image of the halo hung on the wall near the pulpit while the prophet was alive, and the prophet could turn and look at himself hanging on the wall. I began to think about how strange it would be for a preacher in this position. What if every preacher had a picture of themselves behind the pulpit? It would not take long before the congregation began to wonder if the focal point of the sermon was supposed to be on God or the preacher whose portrait hung on the wall staring at them. Above the pulpit hung a familiar Bible verse, and under normal circumstances it would have seemed less eerie. In bold, thick, black letters just above the prophet's enlarged photograph read the verse from Psalm 46:10 in the Bible, "Be still and know that I am God." As a child, I remember looking up at the words, "I am God," looking down at the prophet's halo, and then looking back at the words on multiple occasions. Even in my youth, I wondered if anyone else saw the irony in those words and their location, not yet realizing that this was likely the intent. In later years, the prophet made it clear that it was not his voice that we were listening to, but it was God speaking through him to us. He told us how Jesus Christ was returning to earth in the form of a prophet, and I just knew that our prophet was the prophet. I was being still, but I was confused as to who was God. I never knew that I was supposed to believe the prophet was God, and I always found it odd that some sects within the message did believe just that. I began to wonder what it was like in the prophet's church before that psalm quotation plaque was hung above the pulpit. In the early photographs of the church, it was not there. Specifically, I was curious to learn more about the church before the prophet was the center of focus.